Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. The way the weather's been going this week really makes us start to think about spring. It's a good thing. And so we're getting started. Just want to welcome everybody, and as I usually do, to start off by thanking the Foundation of the Arts and Sciences and Daniela and Jenna for pulling all these loose ends together, making these things happen. We really appreciate that, and I encourage everyone to support the foundation in one way or another. Certainly the activities that they have planned for the spring and the summer are awesome. So pick up a catalog. I was just made aware that that camp has opened today. I mean, the general registration has opened today. So if you're not a member of the foundation and you're interested in camp for your kids, grandkids, relatives, visitors for the summer, be sure and look into that. And I'm gonna just get going. Having said those thank yous, and most of you know Darlene, who has been my my new right arm, and really filling in quite well. And as many of you know, she's like a hands-on, not like, she's definitely a hands-on professor, and she started this thing called SciStarter, which is a terrific link to a variety of science projects, and that supports, I guess some people are calling it citizen science, others just call it citizen involvement. And so today, what we thought we'd do is have her take a couple minutes here to give us an overview of SciStarter, the things they're doing, and then kind of conclude with some of the things that are available to you all on LBI. As we've been saying all along here, we really want to encourage people to participate more than just attend sessions, and certainly attending the sessions and getting some insights, a wonderful thing. And I think it's a great community that we're building doing that. But we really want to stimulate people to get involved. And to do that, we want to make sure that we provide opportunities, and that the SciStarter is really a great place to do that. So I'm going to turn it over to Darlene.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you everybody for joining. Today, I see some familiar names out there. It's great to welcome you back to Science Saturday. And as Rick mentioned, I'm really going to focus on citizen science. Goes by many names: participatory research, community science, crowdsourcing is probably the one that people can really get their heads around. And the idea here is that by many, many, many small acts taken together, we can make a big impact. So I'm going to walk you through some projects, but first I'm going to give you a little more information about what citizen science is. So Jenna, if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen. And let's see if we can get into presenter mode. I always forget how to do that. Let's see. How do we do that?
Slideshow. You should be able to click slideshow next to share. Oh, that works too.
I know, you think I would know this by now.
Looks good.
Later. The power of citizen science. And I also want to encourage you all to just introduce yourself using chat, your name, where you're zooming in from, and then also anything that strikes, interest, curiosity, concerns among what I'm talking about. You don't have to wait till the end to drop that into chat, and maybe I can address it real time. If not, we'll get to it at the end. So the power of citizen science. This is big. This is a global movement where people really from all walks of life get involved because they're curious or they're concerned about a topic. And citizen science enables a connection to real, authentic engagement in scientific research. It is a collaboration, usually with scientists, but sometimes it's somebody who's involved in city planning, other stakeholders. The difference between citizen science and STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, and math, that you may be more familiar with, is that STEM programs, primarily, their goal is to teach you something about science. And while that happens with citizen science, that's definitely not the primary goal. The primary goal is to answer a question that somebody cannot answer without your help. Typically, scientists have either too little data, too few data points. And so they develop instructions, also known as protocols, that we follow to help fill those data gaps. And we'll go through some examples in a moment. Or there's too much data. There's just too much information, and they need help from the public, you, me, to help analyze, categorize, classify, annotate those files online. Citizen science can and does involve, it's as broad as science is. Observations. So we've heard from speakers in the past, Jim Webster in particular, who talks about making observations about constellations that actually go towards monitoring light pollution. So you're sharing your observations, you're learning, but you're sharing them through databases and other infrastructure that can make them available, your observations available to scientists and others who need that data. You might be monitoring, so air quality, light pollution, like I just talked about. Certainly bird migration is a big one. I bet we have some birders that are here tuning in. If you use eBird or Merlin, you're actually a citizen scientist there, because you're sharing your observations through apps that are used by many different researchers, scientists, decision makers. Measuring is very similar to monitoring, but it may require some additional quantifiable activities and protocols. Analyzing, this is where I mentioned that there's just so much data that's available. Camera trap images are a fun one because it allows you to kind of take a vacation without having to leave your house. You can look at possibly never before seen images from camera traps set in the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica. In fact, that is a project. And so you're asked to help identify the types of animals or activity that's happening within those images that you see online. And sometimes it involves collecting samples that are actually sent in to labs and other places. So anyone, anywhere is welcome to get involved in citizen science. You don't have to travel to a lab to get it done. Very often it can just be done from wherever you are. And it's serious science. So not that STEM programs are not serious, but citizen science almost always results in something that leads to answering a research question. Peer-reviewed journals use this data. So you might be wondering, how is that at all possible? But right now, we'll just go through some fun outcomes from citizen science. And I've shared these in the past, but scientists from the North Carolina State University now know that human belly buttons contain more than 50 species of bacteria. And they know that because many, many, many volunteers signed up for their project, received a sterilized Q-tip and some instructions, swabbed their belly buttons, mailed it back to NC State. And so that was a fun project. We'll talk a little bit about this project called Stall Catchers, which I've used as an example again and again. So if some of these seem familiar to you, they are. These are just gold standard types of projects. Stall Catchers in particular, they go and they quantify the value of volunteer engagement, citizen science, and how that lines up to the equivalent of research time that it would have taken professional scientists or graduate students to do. So in this case, 3.5 months of lab equivalent research was done in a weekend by citizen scientists. And Stall Catchers is a really important project because that helps us fill some gaps about Alzheimer's. So we'll go through what that means in a moment. Space is a big one. I already talked about Jim Webster and identifying constellations outside through stargazing, but there's also lots and lots of space-related projects where you're taking massive amounts of information from things like the Hubble telescope, putting them online, very simple instructions for you to go ahead, identify. Maybe you're looking at the first of its kind spiral galaxy that hadn't been identified before. There's nothing you won't be able to do through well-designed protocols and instructions, and we help you find all of these on SciStarter. Birds, never-ending papers published about birds and other forms of biodiversity because of millions and millions of volunteers who are involved in citizen science projects. You can see that one is from iNaturalist, and I bet some of you here use iNaturalist. The project before is on a very popular platform called Zooniverse. These are all forms of citizen science. So I'm going to just skip a little, and these are huge. So this one platform, Zooniverse, largely funded by different federal agencies, has 2.7, probably close to 3 million registered volunteers. And you can use and get involved in Zooniverse without having to have an account. So you can imagine how many people are involved in that just one type of citizen science, where that's an example of scientists that have too much data and they need help from the public to analyze it. They often use platforms like Zooniverse. So millions of people already involved in these projects. You will not be alone. iNaturalist, roughly the same. Millions and millions of people who download the free app. And if you haven't used it yet, I strongly encourage you to. iNaturalist just enables you to take pictures of things around you. You can document all the biodiversity happening in your garden. And later on, in a couple of weeks or months, actually, Rick and I will be back to talk about other ways that you can really leverage and build out your garden to just support the ecosystem on Long Beach Island in particular. But iNaturalist will probably come into play there. Simple way to identify whatever you see. You don't even have to know what you're looking at here. When you snap a picture and you upload it, there will be people who help you identify exactly what you're looking at, the species, the taxon. They will get down and dirty and tell you exactly what that is. And you can use an option of using AI to kind of guess at what you're looking at. So not only do you learn, hey, wow, I didn't know that's what a nymph of a spotted lanternfly looks like. Well, you take a picture of it, upload it, and you're going to find out what you're looking at. But also everything that you submit through the app gets put into the world's largest biodiversity database called GBIF. So many papers are published due to that data. And if you're worried about messing up data because you're unsure of what you're looking at, don't be worried about that. These citizen science projects often have very good quality control. For the project that I mentioned called Stall Catchers, 10 people have to see and say the same exact thing about a very small piece of this data set. And until that happens, it's not considered research quality data, research grade data. So you will not, unless you intentionally find some way to actively mess up the databases, which I doubt you will, don't let that be a reason why you don't get involved in citizen science. There are checks and balances in place there, and you will do far more good than harm. All right. Going back to citizen science and stall catchers. So on the left, you see something that says flowing. On the right, you see something that says stall. And what you're looking at here, if you were involved in this project, you'd actually be looking at very small clips, video clips from an ultrasound. This is blood flowing through the brain vessel in a mouse that has been affected with Alzheimer's. This is a research project out of Cornell University. So if we were involved in this project, you would do some fun exercises online that help you get used to knowing when the blood is stalled. You see that red one, that black is because there's a stall there. The blood can't flow. The one on the left is showing you, and you would see this in a video. It's going through. And all you're asked to do, you don't have to tell any information about yourself. You're involved in an Alzheimer's project that is not asking you for personal information about yourself or someone that you care about who may be affected with this. What you're doing is going through mounds and mounds and mounds of data to help these scientists in Cornell start to understand the correlation or not between stalled blood flow and Alzheimer's. And what they do is they do this for different drug approaches. And I can tell you from papers that have been published, they're seeing an indication of stalls, the number of stalls and their increase does have an impact on memory loss. By removing the stalls and improving blood circulation, they're actually able to restore some memory back into mice that they're working with. So your simple acts of playing, in essence, an online game, and it is gamified and it's fun, goes to help accelerate Alzheimer's research. Now, this citizen science project leader, Pietro Michelucci, you see his name on the left here, really studies the field of human interaction, computational interaction, and its relationship to accelerating scientific research. And so he'll often hear, well, why can't scientists just do this on their own? So as an individual, roughly 70% of the annotations, that's you saying, is it stalled or flowing? That's an annotation. Is roughly 70% accurate. Scientists, 90% accurate. Let me just move my screen so I could see the number here. Taken together, 99% accurate. Can you believe it? We're actually more accurate when we have more people involved in these things. It's a numbers game. And he goes so far to just describe, well, why can't AI do this? And yes, actually, when you're involved in some of these projects, you're making AI smarter so that we can use it to help accelerate research and discovery. But you can see here what humans are better at now versus AI. Humans contribute more of the cognitive aspects of things, creativity, but AI is starting to catch up. Oh, and for all of you out there who like evidence, which you should, lots of peer-reviewed journals, papers made possible only because of citizen science involvement. And we've seen a huge increase in the number of papers that have been published using data from you, volunteers, citizen scientists. There's even an entire field of practice here. It's called the Citizen Science Association. They publish papers, they help push forward best practices and so forth. Universities are very involved. I am a professor at Arizona State University, where we do a lot of citizen science there in many different ways, and we study the field to make it better and more accessible to people. But here's an example from North Carolina State University, where freshmen who come in take a course on citizen science, they engage in citizen science projects, but they also found a way to leverage field assistants. These are just volunteers, freshmen coming in to help accelerate anybody's research project that comes in. And they even offer prizes for that, for undergraduate research. So in other words, citizen science is not going anywhere. So what about SciStarter? SciStarter helps you find these opportunities to get involved. I created SciStarter when I was a graduate student at Penn because I found it frustrating that it was otherwise pretty difficult just to find these opportunities. And you really shouldn't have to go to graduate school after I worked for Discover Magazine for 10 years to try to figure out what the right terminology is to find these projects. We mentioned earlier, if you knew the term citizen science, you would be able to find these. If you understood that you should use the terminology of participatory research, you would find these. But that's not really helpful to most people. So SciStarter just makes it very easy to find thousands of projects. We connect people to real science they can do. These are our projects. These are our core partners. So I mentioned Discover. We still work with Discover. Volunteer Match is a good partner of ours, every single one of these. We're largely supported by the National Science Foundation, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, Moore Foundation, NASA, and many others. We're a corporate volunteer partner for Verizon. We work a lot with the Girl Scouts. If you have a Girl Scout in your family, you may be familiar with the Think Like a Citizen Scientist journey. That's all operated through SciStarter. And we do work with NOAA. And in fact, I recently was appointed to NOAA's Science Advisory Board. So hopefully I can provide more information on local NOAA activities for you shortly. So if there's a place to start with SciStarter, I highly recommend that you go to this site, and we'll share the slides. We'll share a link to this recording and of course the slides when we send you a follow-up email for everybody that has registered. But scistarter.org/training, it's just a really good place to get started. These are free online interactive trainings. You can do these without an account. If you have an account, then you're eligible for these digital badges, which are fun, and they link nicely to LinkedIn as well. And they will say, look, this person who completed this training practiced or acquired the following skills and competencies. So the digital badge actually has a lot of purpose and meaning in it. So I would encourage you to create an account and do the trainings. They help you build confidence too. So by the time you're doing a project, you're really ready to go. This is the project finder. So on SciStarter, as I mentioned, you can find something that's of interest to you. You can search by keyword. You can enter your location, either where you are or where you might be traveling to. You can search for projects based on the amount of time that's needed, based on if any equipment is needed. Typically, there is no equipment that's needed, by age range, and more. And keep in mind too, many projects are classified as online, which means they can be done from anywhere. New this year is our SciStarter Ambassador Program. This is where either really ambitious volunteers, citizen scientists, or people who have already are facilitating connections in their community. That could be an educator, that could be a museum professional, that could be a librarian. They're becoming certified ambassadors. That means they are not just doing the foundations of citizen science training, but they're being brought up to speed on best practices to introduce citizen science and SciStarter into their communities. So it's a new program for us. We work through these cohorts so that we can effectively evaluate the impact and make improvements before the next cohort is ready. But March 14th is the deadline to join the current cohort if you wanted to apply to become an ambassador, or if you want to share this with a facilitator in your life. Certified ambassadors, I think we're up to 154 now. Certified ambassadors become part of a public directory. So anybody can actually do the trainings to become an ambassador, but to become a certified ambassador, Arizona State University does background checks and a little extra hoops that you need to jump through in order to appear on the public directory like this. But the reason the public directory is important is because let's say you are, you're running an event and you would like a subject matter expert to come in and introduce SciStarter and citizen science to your community. These are free services. You would be able to find a local ambassador to come in and help you do that. And if we have librarians on the line here, we have so many resources made available specifically for librarians. We're just starting to work with the Beach Haven Library there, and one in Ocean County. I believe it's in Manahawkin. Very early stages because it takes time. But there are many, many, many free resources available to libraries. In fact, there are more than 1,000 libraries around the country that are formal community hubs for citizen science. So you can actually check kits out from these libraries to get involved in some projects that have step-by-step instructions, local field guides for you, equipment or tools that can make your experience easier or better, and more. So see if your local library is already involved. If not, maybe you can just point them over and we can help them access these free resources and trainings. April is Citizen Science Month. So today's March 1st. Happy March, only a month away. There will be more than 1 million acts of science that take place between April 1st and April 30th, as there were last year, that help contribute and accelerate scientific research. So an act is basically just some involvement in citizen science. All those ways of getting involved that I showed earlier, by sharing an observation, doing measuring or monitoring, each one of those counts as an act. So 1 million acts of science, and we carefully track these and log these, is what we expect to achieve in April. Will it be early like it was last April? We're not sure. We hit 1.24 million acts of science by the end of the month. But if you're looking for a reason to get involved, 1 million acts of science and our challenge, maybe that's a good one for you to get involved in. Go to citizensciencemonth.org for that. I'm going to open up a web page to show us what we're doing at SciStarter to support Long Beach Island Foundation Science Saturday, this series of talks that you've been part of here, including this one today. And what we've done there is try to align a citizen science project that you can do locally that fits the theme or topic of the speakers. So let's take a look there. I'll stop sharing for now while I can pull up that page. And also, again, just want to encourage you to introduce yourself there. Thank you, everybody, for introducing yourself there in the comments. And yes, for these questions, absolutely. Please do share SciStarter. It's all free, thanks to the support that we have, that we're really fortunate for. It is all free, and we have a very supportive, active team at SciStarter who will answer any questions that you have as well. All right, so let's get online and open up the website so we can look through some of the projects. And please do keep asking your questions. Give me 1 minute. And let's hope that it's not being worked on right now, Rick. I did ask somebody to just add that new project.
Okay.
And I should have given him a heads up that I was also doing a talk, so he probably shouldn't do it right now, but let's see what happens. I'm putting the link in chat as well, so you can follow along. And I'm going to open it up. And I will share. Okay. So you should see the same page I see right now. This is the page on SciStarter. We call it a microsite that highlights local ways you can get involved in citizen science project. By the way, Rick, I've sat on that bench there with my mom. It's so beautiful. And even just sitting there, this is on the property behind or adjacent to the foundation. If anybody here has not had a chance to see that and just sit around nature there, I really encourage you to do it. There are so many citizen science projects you can do just sitting there. And we did. In the background, back here, I don't know if you could see that. It's like an area to sit and observe the osprey nests, which is back a little bit further, as just one example. Turning your head to the right, being able to start to make observations about the crabs that are there. I mean, it's pretty much limitless how many you can do, but let's go over what you can do. So you'll find on this microsite, brief description of what we do, a list of upcoming events. And by the way, Jenna and our team members at SciStarter are working to put all of the upcoming March events in there. And you're going to find some real fun ones, including an online event. an in-person event that you can come to on, is it March 15th? I think that's our first in-person event that we have.
Yep.
And actually, let me just let the SciStarter person know not to change anything. Don't change anything yet. Okay. And then also on April 26th at the pavilion, and Rick, you should just stop me if I shouldn't be mentioning anything yet. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but
Have at it.
All right, April 26th at the pavilion in Barnegat Light, not far from Kubel's, kind of between Kubel's and the Pollinator Garden. We're inviting every speaker to come there and not only just talk about their work, but also we'll have hands-on demos of a lot of these projects that you'll find on this microsite, and including some local tours where you can start to get involved in some of these projects there. And ultimately, that's one of the goals, is to see how can we stitch these efforts together so that the collective impact is so much greater, especially as we're looking to protect the island and the surrounding areas there. So that's April 26th, and we'll have some more information about that shortly. So Osprey Watch, I mentioned this already, and we have a speaker who will be talking about that coming up shortly. This is where, you're asked to help make and share observations about osprey. They're often tagged. You can follow the step-by-step instructions just by clicking Learn More. You'll be taken to a page with a lot more detail on how to get involved. I'm logged in, so I can add this to my list. That's if it's something that if you're a teacher or you just want to share this with somebody else. Oftentimes we'll create lists and just share a list with people. If you're an educator, you actually get to track, monitor, and support the progress of your students as they're involved in the projects that you've added to your list. So how to get started, the ideal age groups that are here. You'd spend your time outdoors. We don't have a specificity for how many times you should get involved. This one, I think just once is great, but if you can make multiple observations over time, I'm sure that's even more helpful. So this is the type of project that you might want to get involved in. And again, somebody uses that data. That's what's neat about citizen science. You're sharing your observations in ways that are used. Underneath, and this will be updated once the new speaker comes on, but for each project, we link it to the speaker's talk from Science Saturday, and that will take you back to the LBIF page where you can see the full talks too. Paddle for the Edge, if you haven't been involved in that project, that's a really good one as well. Very specific protocols. I've been involved in the past. It's just a great way take a very up close and personal look at the edges of our marshes out there. So you literally paddle over, you take pictures, you're asked to kind of help identify it, the edge, the angle of the edge that you're looking at, types of growth that are on there. And so by working with local volunteers to help keep an eye on and continue documenting those edges, scientists are able to use this, and they share back information, which is really important. This is a great project that does communicate so well with its volunteers, not just in terms of instructions and what's coming up, but also impact and outcomes year over year. There's a nesting project. We have two situated in Barnegat Light. I know there's some efforts that are on the south end of the island as well. So those are examples of hyper-local projects that are kind of operated by people who are local. This next one, called COCO-RAS, Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network, is an example of more than a national project because it has some international reach there. But this is a project where the core scientist is not located locally, but your data locally is really needed. And your data locally is actually used. So you're asked to use a rain gauge, a quality rain gauge. So this is a case where some libraries do loan it out, but it's better to just, if you have $35 to make the investment, you'd go on the COCO-RAS website, you would get their standardized rain gauge that they recommend. And when it rains or snows or hails, but in particular rain, you're just asked to go out, record the measurement, the precipitation, using a very simple data entry form, dump out the rain, put it back. In doing that, your data is actually often used or can be used by your local, well, it's used by the National Weather Service, which is really cool because they need this granular type of data to fill in blanks. And what's really interesting about this project too, is how you get to see, first of all, you see all your neighbors around who are already involved in that project, but it's pretty remarkable to see that your rain precipitation can differ from somebody who's only 2 blocks away. That's why the granular, lots of data matters and helps with more accurate rain forecasts in particular. Globe at Night, we've heard about this one from our past speaker, Jim Webster. And again, this is one that is a global project. But that doesn't matter because you're measured. Say that again, Rick?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
It's Rick. So while you're talking about that one, I want to encourage people to participate in that because we know on LBI, and you've probably, those of you who are on LBI or have been there, know we do get these dramatic and significant differences in rain at various locations on the island. And with the island flooding situation that we deal with, this information is extremely helpful. And this is one place to be able to gather that information so that those municipalities dealing with flooding have some accurate information up and down the island. And it's really important to participate. Many people have gardens anyhow, so it's good to have a rain gauge in your garden so you know how much rain your garden's getting. But if you participate in this, it can really, really help out the municipalities on LBI. So just a little plug.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. Globe at Night is somewhat similar. Globe at Night, you are instructed on how to identify different constellations relatively easily, which is fun. Who doesn't want to learn about and kind of brag that you know the constellations, which I still don't. I still need the guides that are there available at Globe at Night. But in essence, by looking at a constellation, by looking for a particular constellation during the right time in the evening, at night, assuming there's not a lot of cloud cover, what you're doing is you're reporting the stars that you cannot see in that constellation. And that is actually one of the ways to monitor what's called light pollution. So this is ambient light that's basically blocking you from seeing the rest of those stars. When taken together, that information about light pollution tells a story, but more importantly, locally, you'll start to see the impact of, you'll start to be able to see the level of light pollution near you. Now, the good thing is it's pretty simple to mitigate. you don't want light pollution because it does affect sleeping patterns in all kinds of species. Obviously, energy consumption, which is related to economic impact, mental health, particularly if you're not able to sleep well, nesting habits, migration patterns, you name it. There's a lot of downside to light pollution, but it is fairly easy to mitigate simply by turning off your outdoor lights at nighttime. That's one of the biggest ways where you can just drop it. And speaking of that, spring migration is coming soon. And the migration is especially a time where you want to turn your lights off. Spring and fall migration. Turn your lights off at night, because I don't think most people know, I certainly didn't before I got involved in all this, that nighttime migration is extremely popular for birds. And they kind of just hitch a ride on using the wind. But the light pollution throws them, it disorients them, and it causes fatigue. And then so many just die. They become food for predators looking for weak birds in particular. So turn your lights off during spring migration. But globe at night, who would think an outdoor project that gets involved in monitoring light pollution that most people get involved in because they want to learn how to, observe constellations, actually has an impact on our birds. You can learn more about it too by just clicking on the recording, going over to the science section of LBI Foundation's website, and watching even last year's speakers. Globe Observer, this is another example of a global project that uses a free app called Globe Observer that actually has 4 different protocols. I've highlighted here the mosquito one, but the other 3, really the data that you submit through this app for the 3 other protocols is used to help calibrate instruments on NASA satellites. It doesn't seem possible, right? How does it seem possible that in our spare time, we're going outside and we're entering simple data points, which is fun and important to do, that your acts, when taken together, help to improve satellites. And you're actually ground truthing satellite data. So in this case, the Globe Observer app monitors satellites that are orbiting overhead. I think they tend to fly over once every 6 days or so. And so there are satellites that are constantly looking for sources of water. Water is energy, water is power. Water is something we all need. So understanding where it is and where it isn't is super important. So what you're asked to do in the other 3 protocols is start to identify first the land cover that you're standing on. It's very simple. Look below and select from one of the options that this app will show you. Is it sand? Is it asphalt? Whatever the options are. Grass, select the one. So that's the land coverage part of it. Another is to look up and take pictures of the clouds above you. And then you don't even have to know about the different types of cloud formation, but this is an example you're going to learn because they give you options to identify the type of cloud that you're seeing with pictures. So select the type that you see, estimate the amount of cloud coverage that you see. Is it half? Is it full? Is it less than a fraction? Again, fixed options for you to select from. Good. That tells you a little bit now about the land coverage that you have, is permeable or not, and the types of clouds that are above you. And what's interesting is the satellites that go above, they can take pictures of the clouds. They aren't always taking pictures of clouds, but they can only see one part. They can see one side of what's happening, and you've all seen clouds have layers. So they're asking you to ground truth what you see from below that the satellites cannot see. So it's 2 pieces of data: cloud type, land coverage. Then you're asked, and you can only, if you choose just to get involved in one of those protocols, that's great. But you're also invited to take pictures and measure the height of trees that are around you. It seems impossible to measure the height of a tree, doesn't it? Well, not with the app and with built-in sensors that are already in your phone. So you're just instructed to take so many steps back from the tree that you're observing, and you point your phone camera to the bottom and to the top of the tree. And believe it or not, that's how you get the measurement of the tree height. And then you're asked to identify the type of tree. Again, you don't have to know what it is. If you do, that's great. If not, there's software that's in there that helps you get at what type of tree that is. So those pieces of information are taken together to help start to identify where water is, where water isn't. In the process of that project, they realize that when you start to identify where water is kind of pooling. It's natural to understand that things like mosquitoes are breeding there. So then they started using the same app to address Zika. So you can get involved in the mosquito habitat mapper, part of that same Globe Observer app, and just add data. Or you can take it a step further and actually get involved in safely looking at the eggs that are in there and helping scientists to identify if these tend to be the type of mosquitoes that are bringing Zika to us. Vector-borne disease is what it's called. And so really 4 or 5 projects in one free app that you could do. And they're pretty diverse types of projects. So that's the Globe Observer. iNaturalist, I already mentioned, so popular. If you're not using it, just download the app, get involved in it. It's a lot of fun. And you would not believe the hundreds, if not more, people on the in Long Beach Island, on Long Beach Island, who already use iNaturalist. And you'll see it when you go up and you spot the different observations and where they are and what people see. Lights Out Philly is an effort. I think there's one underway in Atlantic City too. This is related to the light pollution. Turn your lights out, especially during spring and fall migration, to help save the lives of birds coming through. Marine Debris Tracker is another one for people who do beach walks. It's a great app to not just identify, oh yes, you know, there's some trash or there's some debris. Even if your beach walk shows no debris, 0 is an important data point. But you're actually helping to identify the type of debris or trash that you see there. And ultimately, this is looking for a way to track back sources of plastics and microplastics that are making us sick and polluting our water. My Coast, we've had speakers come in. I don't remember if we've had one come in yet this year. This might be what Amanda's talking about. I don't recall, Rick and Jenna. But My Coast is another really important app that helps us document changes in our tides. And this data is used directly by decision makers in New Jersey. So they need your help. Download My Coast. It's another great example of a simple project, Bay or Oceanside.
And by the way, yes, JC Neer we've had speakers from JC Neer on My Coast last year, as a matter of fact. There's a very interesting app that goes along with that lets you envision flooding in one thing or another. By the way,
it might be that app. It might be My Coast.
Yes, probably.
Yep. Happy Whale, that's one of several apps that, you know, if you see a whale, which is fun, this is also just a way to take out your phone and share your observation. Easy. And again, it's interesting because you'll see others who have seen observations. So instead of kind of speculating or wondering or piecing dots together, the data actually helps inform what's actually happening. And you know, evidence-based approaches are always better. So the more data that we have, the better off everybody is. Great Sunflower Project. You don't need a sunflower. If you do, that's great. But it's a weirdly named project that's actually very fun to do. You just ask to go outside and make an observation of a flowering plant for 3 to 5 minutes. It could be as short as 3 minutes. There's a minimum time. And identify the types of pollinators that come and visit that plant. Very simple. That's why they have you observe one flowering plant, because it can be difficult to monitor pollinators if you're trying to watch many different plants. So great project, really fun one to do with kids. Lots of ancillary materials, such as coloring sheets that help people identify pollinators, worksheets that match pollinators to their plants. This is how you'll start to, all of a sudden, start to understand, wow, the hummingbird's beak fits into that trumpet flower for a reason. There's a reason why these pollinators are shaped the way they are. You'll start to see that they're attracted to different colors. So Great Sunflower Project is great. Those materials also are available in Spanish, and we created them largely for people in Arizona from the Navajo Nation. So if you ever wanted to see what that language looked like, you can go to this project page and you'll see all of those downloadable free worksheets. But that's a good fun project to get involved in. I see change is similar to iNaturalist, except you're really sharing your it's almost like a journal. So you don't just say, hey, here's what I see and document it. You actually say, has anybody else seen things budding so early? Or I've noticed an increase in flooding around Black-eyed Susans. Has anybody else seen this? And it matches some of this with actual satellite data. And so this is a phenomenal app that's starting to use public participation and perception with AI and matching it to actual data as well, and filling in some gaps there too. So that's icy change. And I want to leave time for Q&A, but there's ones for jellyfish. There's ones for restoring and rewilding patches of nature, encouraging people to just let your gardens grow. Soon, we'll be back in touch to talk about, I'm getting ahead of myself with this one too, Rick, but it might not be a bad idea to put a plug in too for the garden project that we're looking at, because you'll see that added to this page within an hour. That's a project that I mentioned that I've asked the SciStarter person not to add in case it updates the site while we're looking at it. But there is a new project that's a national effort. Do you want to mention that one, Rick?
Yeah. So I don't have that link up. It's called
I'll do it. Yep, I got it.
Backyard
It's called Homegrown National Park.
Homegrown National Park. And the idea is that everybody who has a little garden is helping nature. And if and this is an app that's on the internet. And what you do is you register, not that anybody's going to be coming to your garden, but you register it so that this organization is building out a whole map of all the backyard gardens that can be looked at as a natural resource, as nature at work by homeowners. So I'm really going to encourage everybody on LBI to do this, and we're going to have a couple of presentations later on in the year when it gets to be planning time, probably more like June. But the benefit of this is information, this website, as well as what our presentations are going to be, will help you identify what you should be having in your garden, not to put so you avoid invasives, and that you plant things like like the plants that pollinators are going to be able to enjoy, and then you can enjoy more of the butterflies that are flying through and all those things. So, and I really want to encourage any of you who happen to be garden club members, get a hold of me. I really see this as an opportunity for the foundation to sort of spearhead something on LBI, but something that's much bigger than LBI. And of course, people have lovely gardens, perhaps at some other home that may be in New Jersey or elsewhere. And those gardens as well should be identified in this app to build out the whole idea to eliminate invasives, encourage pollinators, and improve our collective backyards to make a more beautiful, if you will, nationwide garden. So yeah, and I wanted to make sure that we got that out there. There's some great projects. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm so glad. Thank you. And again, encouraging people to just add their questions or comments. I see one from Bonnie. Hi, Bonnie, talking about butterflies and using iNaturalist for that. I think that's a really great example too. And so I would love, in our last 10 minutes, if you have any other questions, you're free to take your mute off. I think that works. Come on camera if you'd like. Let us know if you already are involved in a citizen science project, if you use iNaturalist or Zooniverse or one of the other many thousands of projects that are out there. Let us know. And again, the goal here is, over time, it will just take time, is to figure out how these important individual actions can add up to more collective impact. So we can start to see trends, so we can start to quickly fill data gaps that LBI and the surrounding area need, that we can start to even analyze data if scientists and decision makers have too much of it, how we can start to really make an important impact on the island. And we might be able to cut it short unless there's something else to add.
You can do an early dismissal. This is all very good. Well, I'll just sort of wrap things up, and if somebody comes in with a question, we can certainly entertain it. I see a thank you coming up. Well, we started off with 13 people at 11 o'clock, and we've got 20 people now. So I say that's an A, teacher. We actually grew. We didn't shrink.
Great.
So this has really been, I was making notes while you were talking, just thinking about some things I can do with the grandkids this summer. That several of these different things, like the globe at night, the rain garden, the rain cocoa ramp.
Coco Raz.
That's a really important one anywhere, but certainly on LBI. And the cloud observatories, I think also, and these are things, like you say, they're not huge commitments of time. You're going to be out walking in nature anyhow. So here's some way that you can contribute and then gain a little more insight into clouds or birds or night skies or whatever. So I think it's great. And I really appreciate you taking the time to identify those and have them out at the website. I know people get busy and all of a sudden it's 2 weeks later. Oh, what was she talking about? Well, go back to the lbifoundation.org and go to science, and these will be up there. So I don't see any other questions. Oh, well, a couple more. Just thank yous. Good job. That's great. All right. Well, thank you all. And next week, I don't have my list in front of me. I was so busy writing things down. I didn't put it, but anyhow, we'll be here next week, for sure. That's the 8th. Oh,
That's the 8th. And maybe Jenna can remind us who's speaking next week, but I think the 15th is our first in-person
right.
at the foundation. So that would be great. Yes, the program, I believe the program is recorded. Assuming that it is, yes, you'll receive an email for everybody who registered. You'll receive an email with a link to the recording and a link to the slides too. So thank you for.
Yeah, and they're out at lbifoundation.org science. And I don't know how long. It doesn't take too long for them to get posted, but yeah, they will be out there. All right. Well,
yes.
Have a beautiful rest of the weekend, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Happy March.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Darlene. Thanks, Rick. Enjoy your weekends, everyone.